Welcome to Funnel Hacker Radio Podcast, where we go behind the scenes and uncover the tactics and strategies top entrepreneurs are using to make more sales, dominate their markets, and how you can get those same results. Here's your host, Dave Woodward.
Hey everybody, welcome back to Funnel Hacker Radio. I'm your host, Dave Woodward. You guys are in for such a treat today. I am so excited for you guys. You have the opportunity of hearing from who's becoming a huge friend of mine, and that is Daniel Gefen. Daniel, welcome to the show.
Woohoo! Yeah, glad to be here.
The part I love and what you guys are going to get the opportunity of experiencing here as we talk with Daniel is he's probably one of the most authentic people you're ever going to meet. And it's really one of the things we're going to spend time talking about. If you haven't listened to his podcast, definitely go to danielgefen.com and sign up, listen to his podcast. He interviews some of the most amazing, successful entrepreneurs around the world. He's got just crazy success. And the part I love most about Daniel is what he's most passionate about is his family and also entrepreneurs and things. And so with all that said, Daniel, I just want to dive right in. Anything else you want to add about yourself here before we go right into some authenticity stuff?
Nah, let's just dive in.
I love it. Nah, that's good enough.
Nah.
All right. One of the things I was most attracted to you about, and that was the importance of stories. We just released Expert Secrets as far as the book, and you and I were talking about working with Russell Brunson and the opportunity of being authentic and things like that. And storytelling has become one of the most important things we're seeing in marketing. We've got a lot of people who are spending time out there creating videos and things of that sort. We were joking around earlier about, the whole idea as far as, you see all these pictures on Instagram with the Lambos and the bikini-clad girls and all this kind of stuff. And you were kind of coming out against that. And I want to kind of address why against that, and why is authenticity so important in everything that you're doing?
Okay, cool. So it's very simple. The reason why Lamborghinis and hot girls and big mansions and swimming pools and all that stuff doesn't work is because nobody really cares. Like, we don't really care about your stupid Lamborghini. Like, two things are going to come across if you basically take a picture of your rented Lamborghini. It's either that you're a complete jackass or I'm jealous. And so like, I feel bad about myself. So dude, thank you for making me feel like a little wiener. And neither of those feelings are positive. Like, they don't inspire me. They don't motivate me. Right. But when I see somebody who's real, who's like, this is who I am, that's what inspires me. That's what builds a connection, a deep connection. And I think Russell Brunson does that really well. Like, if you go to Russell Brunson's website, for example, you click on the video and he's standing there in his garden or in the park, wherever he is, right? There's no fancy car there, although Russell, I'm sure, drives a very fancy car. And he could have taken it in his, mansion, which, he didn't. I'm not going to mention his wife. And all he did was he just literally stood there and talked about how when he got married for 2 years, he couldn't have children. They struggled to have children. And I'm telling you that when I was I had Russell on my show and I was preparing for the interview and I watched that video, I cried. I had tears in my eyes. And I connected to him on such a deep level. And that's so many internet marketers and people online are missing out because they're not connecting to people because they think they know what people want. They don't. It's really not the Lamborghinis and the fancy schmancy houses. It really isn't. And you know what? I'll give you an example. Okay. Everybody's trying to game the system, right? We're all trying to get 1 million quadrillion followers on Instagram, right? We're all trying to get like 100,000 likes on our Facebook post or page, right? We're all trying to get all the lovely, and now there's hearts and lovely flowers. I don't even know where it's going to go next, right? And I'll be honest with you, like, I try to game the system too. Like, we try to like put these quirky little quotes, like, you're amazing, like I don't know, all these super cool quotes. And I tried different things, and to be honest with you, it doesn't really work that well. Well, one day, about 3 weeks ago, it was my grandfather's memorial. My grandfather died about 2 years ago. He was 83 years old, and he was a miracle. My grandfather was in the Holocaust. He watched both of his parents get shot in the head in front of him. He was about 13 years old. All of his siblings, 5 of them, were all murdered. My grandfather was actually shot and buried alive. And they missed him. The bullet went through his shoulder, and he dropped to the ground, and he was in a pile of bodies, and he lay there and pretended to be dead. He waited and waited for a number of hours until in the middle of the night he basically got up and ran away. They caught him. He was hung twice. Both times the sirens went off. There were false alarms. One time he was about 12 feet from the gas chambers, and a Nazi soldier was standing next to him, and the Nazi's horse made on the Nazi's boot. And so this Nazi turned around to my grandfather, who was standing in the line there, and he said, "Come here, you dirty Jew, clean this up." My grandfather walked out of the line, cleaned up the boot, and then this Nazi soldier said to him, get out of here." So these are some of the things that happened to my grandfather, and it was his Memorial Day, and I wanted to basically just write a post about him in his memory. And what I wrote that story in the post, and I also said the following. I said, I've interviewed now over 80 very, very successful people from all over the world, but nobody ever will inspire me more than my grandfather. My grandfather will always be the person I look up to the most. And I put a picture of him with this beautiful smile. And I said, you would see his beautiful smile. You would never know what was behind that smile. You would never know what this man went through. And I'll be honest with you, Dave, I thought nothing of it. I was just purely sharing. I was just posting it in his memory. Within 24 hours, that post went completely viral. It went everywhere. It just got shared and shared. It got shared about 700 times on Facebook. It got, I think it was like 5,000 likes. That was just on my personal thing. And then all the other, interactions on all the other. I couldn't even keep up with it. I mean, hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of comments. I couldn't respond to every single one, but it was so beautiful. People were like so inspired. People were writing me a whole thing about, wow, your grandfather really was a special man, and you should continue his legacy. And Dave, I was so taken aback because I didn't realize what an impact it would have on people. But that's where it comes down to the fact that we live in a society, we live in a generation that is so fake. It's so filled with filters and likes and different angles, and you can freaking make yourself look like whatever you want. Like you just take pictures and filter it out, and it's so fake. We live in such a fake world that people crave. They literally crave authentic, genuine, real people. That's it. That's what people crave. And I promise you, for those of you listening, if you just be you, just share yourself, share your weaknesses, and people will fall in love with you, and they will buy into you, and they will buy your product. Not because your product is cheaper or better. They will buy your product because they buy into you as a person.
Wow. And Daniel, I can tell you, I was really touched when I was doing the preparation for this podcast to see that post from your grandfather. But to hear you share it is totally different. I can tell you, I wasn't that close to my dad. I'm still not as close as I'd like to be, but I was really close to my mom's grandfather. And when I heard your story about your dad, or about your grandfather, and then to actually hear you say it, I've got chills. Only because for one, he's an amazing man, having never met him, obviously. But the part I'm most impressed by is who you've become because of him. And I think that that's a huge legacy for him, is you. And that's pretty awesome.
Thank you.
Really awesome. And I know when we, sorry, I'm usually get choked up on these things. But I can tell you it's such a, what you're talking about is one of the things that as a marketer, we struggle with all the time. And that is, yeah, you want to sell things. I get that. But I can tell you that as I've been around Russell and as I've been around highly, highly successful entrepreneurs, I mean, 7, 8, 9, 10-figure billionaire type of entrepreneurs, it's amazing to me to see those who are the most successful and those who are at the most peace in their own life are those who are not fake, where what you see is what you get. And that authenticity is so magnetic and attracts people so much. It was one of the main reasons I really wanted to have you on the show. We were joking around about a podcast I did recently about messenger bots and all that kind of stuff, and how you're kind of against all that and against just the idea as far as not being real. And Daniel, I really appreciate how authentic you are and your message as far as to other marketers to truly be extremely authentic. It's been a lot of fun here at ClickFunnels. I've been working with Russell. We're now filming everything similar to kind of the Gary Vee thing. And I know you're going head to head with VaynerMedia here, and a different topic we'll get to in just a second. But I think it's been a lot of fun as we started filming things that it's the behind the scenes is what people really like to see. It's been really kind of fascinating to us. We did it more out of fun for us and some of the things we were doing. And, it started off with some Instagram stories and things. And it's gotten to the point now where we've literally hired a guy who, Russell basically films things all the time. And we send this gentleman, a guy by the name of Kevin, who's absolutely an amazing videographer, editor. And he basically creates behind the scenes, of Funnel Hacker TV. We release 3 episodes a week of just what's happening behind the scenes as far as what we're trying to build and create. And it's been really just fascinating to me to see how those are the things that people really want to know. They want to know what, why is Russell doing this, or why is Russell doing that, or what's he up to next, and some of the times it's just quirky and it's stupid. But I think those quirky and stupid things, and as you were making mention, sometimes it's those weaknesses, that authentic, true self, as that comes through to people, it resonates, and people go, you know what? Again, it goes back to the old saying, people like to do business with people they like. I mean, and it's hard to like someone who you can't trust. And I think authenticity is what you've talked about. There's no better way of building trust than being totally true.
But that's why I love autobiographies. Like, I've recently been getting very into reading autobiographies and watching documentaries, because the difference between an autobiography and a book is that when the author writes a book, he's talking at you, right? He's telling you, do this, don't do that, do this, don't do that. And I feel like, it's like it's not as powerful as when I kind of just read about his life and I hear his struggles and I hear how he started with nothing and he built himself up and he got knocked down and then he did this and he did that. And that, for me, I learned so much more out of an autobiography about somebody than them telling me what they think I should be doing or what worked for them, right? And it's the same thing with movies. Like, you can watch a movie. I love documentaries. Like, you watch people's lives and you see, like, for me recently I watched the McDonald's movie, right?
Yeah, I saw that the other day.
Wow. I'm just like, oh my goodness me, this guy, he like really worked his tuchus off, right? I mean, literally, like, we look at McDonald's today and we like, yeah, there's McDonald's, but you look at the story of what he went through and how he did it and it's like, now I understand what went into it, right? I watched Walt Disney, and for those of you listening, if you haven't watched these 2 movies, these are 2 movies that you must see. It's called The Founder, which is the McDonald's story, The Founder, and the other one is the Walt Disney, which I think is called Becoming Walt. Am I right, Dave? It's called Becoming Walt.
It is.
Becoming
Walt. Amazing. Yeah. Yes, it is.
I watch that with my kids. I have 4 children, and I want them to see, instead of playing Angry Birds and all this other nonsense and ping pong apps and whatever it is that they're busy on. It's amazing. You show them, look, this is what Disney became. This is how he became who. His freaking studio got burnt down to the ground, and he had nothing, and he had to start all over again. And then something else happened, and he got let down, and then he went into debt. And you're just like, honestly, you're watching this and you're going, how did this guy produce what he produced after going through all of this? And it's absolutely amazing. And that to me is so much more powerful than anything else. Like, the reason why I believe podcast shows are so powerful today, and the reason why I'm getting on podcast shows like this one, and the reason why I've got my own podcast show, is because when people are able to take 30 minutes to really share who they are and where they're coming from and their story, it's just so much more powerful than putting out an ad on Facebook or putting out an ad on YouTube. Like I've got a question for your audience, Dave. Like, honestly, how many of you notice the Facebook ads, right? How many of you skip the YouTube ads? Those 5 seconds, like 1, 2, 3. Okay, skip. Tick the box, skip. Right? It's so true, right? You scroll up your Facebook feed and you see sponsored. No, next. We're literally, seriously, this generation, we've got filters in our brains. We've got these. I promise you, I bet you our brains have like this little piece in there called filter ads, right? We're born filtering ads out of our life. So anytime we get sold to, anytime there's a interruption, we just skip over it. We just ignore it. So, there are companies spending tens of thousands of dollars or hundreds of thousands of dollars a month on ads, whether it's in papers or in radio or YouTube or Facebook, right? And to me, what's so much more powerful is getting, like Russell, getting on a podcast show like mine and telling over his story and then talking about how he came up with ClickFunnels. That's so much more powerful than an ad popping up saying, oh, ClickFunnels, here you go. I mean, I'm not bashing Facebook ads. I mean, everybody should be doing Facebook ads. But I just think that people are completely missing such a powerful force if you're not getting on podcast shows and telling your story, because that's so much more powerful than all the ads and everything else. And you know what I'm saying, Dave?
Oh, no, I totally agree. And again, I just echo again a couple of different things there. Definitely, you guys should be reading and listening to autobiographies for sure. And again, I love both. Just saw Founder this last week with my family, and again, Becoming Walt are just amazing. But I think the part I love most about what you're saying that applies directly to people listening to this podcast, and that's the importance of them getting out on other people's podcasts and sharing their story, because people connect with that. They resonate with that. It was actually really kind of fascinating. We just went through this Expert Secrets book launch, and I've been trying forever to get Amy Porterfield to promote for us, which she just has never wanted to do. But having her on the podcast was, when Russell was on her podcast, it was crazy. I mean, honestly, I was amazed. She was one of our top 10 affiliates, and yet she never promoted a thing. And it's all because the podcast host has credibility. And when they bring on a guest, you automatically get a part of that credibility. The only reason Daniel's on here is, for one, because he's an absolutely amazing person. And if you don't know Daniel, you have to start following his podcast. But the fact that you're on my podcast, Funnel Hacker Radio, people are going to listen just because they subscribe on a regular basis to Funnel Hacker Radio. And even though you have a ton of credibility yourself, you get some of my own credibility just by being on our show. And I think it's just, again, I highly recommend you guys, if you're not getting on podcasts and you don't think that there's any way of monetizing a podcast, you are completely wrong. It is one of the things I can tell you from our business. I'm always trying. Again, I was honored to be able to get Russell on Daniel's podcast. I mean, it was a huge, seriously, Daniel. I mean, you've interviewed some of the most amazing entrepreneurs, literally from around the world. And so when I had that opportunity to have Russell on your podcast, it was an honor for me. And I know how much he appreciated it as well, just because you now have the opportunity of introducing Russell to an audience that he may otherwise never have had the chance of getting to.
Mm-hmm. Yeah,
and
100%.
I think one of the things I know that you've been working on a ton recently, and we were kind of joking around about earlier as far as going against VaynerMedia, but was that whole idea of helping other people get onto podcasts or helping other people get their story out and being authentic and realizing the importance of that. If you don't mind, just take a few minutes and help people understand what Get Featured is and getfeatured.com and why it's important.
Yeah, so getfeatured.com, I mean, essentially it was born out of a frustration, right? Kind of like what Russell created ClickFunnels because he was frustrated with having to do so many different bits and pieces and then putting them all together, and it was clunky, and that's how ClickFunnels was born. It's the same thing with Get Featured. As a podcast host, I was getting emails every single day from people going, "Hey, Daniel, I love your podcast show. I'd love to be a guest. I just wrote a new book and I just launched a new company, or I'm a consultant and I need to get on your show." And I would just be like, click, delete, 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 delete. Why? Because they don't know how to pitch themselves. It's like, SEO. I can get you to #1 spot on Google and, in 3 weeks and blah, blah, blah. Yeah, delete, spam, spam. So after about a couple of months of me basically just deleting all of these requests, and here's the thing, Dave, and the reason why people want to get on podcast shows is because they see all the big influencers getting on there, and there's a reason. Why is it that Gary Vaynerchuk, who charges $100,000 an hour to speak, right? $100,000, he'll go onto a podcast show and speak for 30 minutes and he won't charge anything? Why? Like, think about that for a second. What? I had Vern Harnish on my show, okay? The guy charges $50,000 for a speech. $50,000. And he came on my show. It was a 30-minute show. Didn't charge me a penny. Why? Right? Jay Abraham. Do you know how much Jay Abraham charges for consultancy? Yeah, I think it's like I think it's $25,000 for an. And the guy comes on my show. Why? Because they've realized the power of podcasting, the power of getting on. Like you said, Dave, it's so true, right? When you watch Michael Jordan or Kobe Bryant, Shaquille O'Neal, and they there's like an advert with them wearing Nike boots or Nike, yeah. Oh, now I've got to go buy Nike shoes because Michael Jordan, he's like 7'20", right? And he's got the hands the size of Mexico. Of course he's freaking good at basketball, but no, it must be the freaking shoes. That's what it is. It's the Nike shoes. If only I get myself a pair of those Nike shoes, I'll be able to slam dunk like Michael Jordan. Oh, sure, right? But we all buy into that because that's what influencer marketing is all about, right? If some famous actress wears some piece of clothing, suddenly, boom, every single girl is because, well, she looks great. No, she looks great because she could look good in freaking anything. Put a sackcloth on it and look good. But it works, right? So it's so true. Like when I come onto your show, Dave, it's your show. Your listeners have probably never heard of me. Like a good portion of your listeners never heard of Daniel Gefen before, but they know Dave Woodward and they love you and they tune into your show and they look forward to it and they plug those little earbuds, those little things into their earbuds and they go for their jog or they drive and they are listening to every word you're saying because they really look up to you and they value what you. Now, who's the guest? Daniel Gefen. Who's he? Well, he must be somebody because Dave wouldn't be having some joker on his show for it, right? He wouldn't waste his time with some joke. So he must be somebody, right? So there's like this automatic, like you build trust and credibility instantly. I'll tell you something else which is incredible about podcast shows and really we touched upon the influencer marketing just now. We touched upon the storytelling, the power of storytelling, which we already mentioned. And the third thing, which is really cool, is if you've got a budget for marketing, if you let's take, $5,000, $10,000, and you put it into Facebook ads, for example, or Google AdWords. Once you've put that money down and those clicks or impressions have taken place, you will never, ever, ever get another lead again after it's all used up. Never. Once it's done, it's done. When you go on a podcast show, let's take this podcast show right here, right now. In 3 years' time from now, somebody could send me an email saying, Daniel, I loved, the show you did with Dave. By the way, I want to get featured on podcast shows, and I'd love to know how Get Featured can help me. And I'll be like scratching my head going, hold on a second. Dave Woodward, podcast show. That was 3 years ago, right? But it's evergreen content. People will stumble upon this episode for years to come because it's good quality content and it's always going to be there. And that's the other thing that's so powerful about getting on podcast shows. It's evergreen.
Seriously, I cannot echo that enough. It's amazing. We always talk about people binge watching TV shows. I'm amazed how many people binge listen to a podcast. I mean, I do the same thing. If all of a sudden I find a podcast and I like it, man, that's the channel I'm listening to. I want to hear every single thing that's happened, and I'll binge 20, 30 episodes.
Well, it's think about it, right? If you watched the fourth season, episode 3 of 24, right? Oh, you're going to go back to the beginning. You're going to go back to the beginning and watch the whole damn thing, right? It's Prison Break, season 3, episode 4. Like, no, I'm going to go back to the beginning and watch the whole damn thing, right? If you stumble upon Gary Vaynerchuk's Daily V and you've never heard of Gary Vaynerchuk before, I promise you will go back and start watching all of his Daily Vs because you'll just become hooked. Casey Neistat, you stumble upon one of his videos and it's like, holy crap, this guy's mental. Let me go back and watch all his stuff, and you start binging. We all do it. It's the same thing with podcast shows. I have guys, literally people emailing me saying, Daniel, I just drove from New York to Arizona, right? And I just listened to all of your shows. I'm like, what the freak? Why would you do that? But people do it. It's crazy. And so I decided one day that I could help people get on podcast shows because there are so many people who don't know how, A, to pitch themselves to the hosts, B, they don't know how to tell a good story because it's all about telling a good story, C, they don't know what message to give over because you've got to have one clear, concise message. If you go on a show and you're all over the place and you're kind of just talking about all different things, then the listeners don't really have one thing to go away with. And if they don't have one thing to go away with, you're not very memorable. They don't remember you, right? You need to be the guy who left this message, right? And so again, it's A, pitching to the hosts, and you've got to know how to pitch. B is having an incredible story, a very powerful story. And I believe that every single person listening to this, and I know you're probably thinking, oh, I don't have a story. My life's pretty boring. I promise you, get on a call with me and I'll show you you've got an amazing story. Okay. 3 is the message. What's your core message? What's the one thing that you want to deliver? Like if you've noticed during this whole conversation with me and Dave, it's all about authenticity because that's the one thing that now I could talk about lots of things. I could talk about entrepreneurship. I could talk about leads, getting more clients. I could talk about outsourcing. I could talk about, time management, like you name it. I could talk about lots of things that I've done, but I've chosen one thing specifically because I know that that's going to leave an impression. You're going to go away and you're going to think about Daniel Gefen and about the power of authenticity and storytelling. And that's the one clear message I want to leave. And then the third thing is what's your call to action? Because there's no point you going on a ton of podcast shows now and then not have a way to turn those listeners into clients. Because if you can't turn those listeners into clients, you're wasting your time. And so we basically started the company to help our clients by pitching them to the hosts, by getting them prepared so they could become incredible guests, and so that they can turn the listeners into leads and eventually into clients. And that's what we do.
Fascinating. Just absolutely fascinating. I can't, nothing, geez, all I can say is I hope you guys would go. Seriously, if you haven't already checked it out by now, I definitely recommend that you guys go and check out getfeatured.com. It is, again, it's a huge tool and a resource. You have to understand, I can't express to you guys how important it is to be able to pitch the host correctly and to have the correct story to tell. But most importantly, you better have one clear message and have a call to action. I actually did a one of my very first few podcasts I did was a guy who was a little bit all over the board, and I could not corral this guy. I could not bring him in. I was like, oh my gosh. I remember giving it to my audio guy who does these edits. I'm like, you're going to have to splice this down so much because it was just all over the place and it didn't make any sense. And I think that, gosh, go to getfeatured.com, check it out. Daniel is the real deal when it comes to authenticity. Please, everyone who's listening, I really hope that you probably go back and re-listen to this again and understand the importance in your message of being truly authentic. It's one of those things as a host, nothing is more appealing to me than when I know I'm going to have someone on who I know is going to be totally authentic. They're not going to pull anything. They're not going to hide anything back. They're going to truly deliver real content and not be a full pitch fest type of thing. That's really important. And you got to be able to master that right, because you don't want to waste your time not having a call to action. But at the same time, as a host, I don't want you coming on my podcast and just pitching all day long where there's no content. And again, I mean, Daniel, you are the master at that, obviously. I mean, people who are listening to this, I'm sure if you haven't taken notes, go back and listen to it again and take notes and most importantly, implement. I'm a huge believer that you can listen to all this stuff, but if you don't take action on it, it's kind of pointless. So please check out, if you haven't already checked it out, make sure you go back and check out getfeatured.com. It's by far one of the best tools and resources for you to get your message out and understand the importance of podcasting. I love it. It's been, for me, it's been kind of so I guess it's two things I'd say. One is get on podcasts. And the second thing is you might want to create your own podcast as well and use that as a platform to bring other people on. Again, it is such an honor for me to have you on this podcast, Daniel. I've been hoping to get you on for a while, and it's just such an honor to have you. You're so authentic and just so pure and provide such massive content. I just love it. So I appreciate that very much.
It's all mine, Dave. I really appreciate it. Thank you very much. And in terms of like just because you said taking action, guys listening to this, take some action and send me an email. I really genuinely, and I mean this. And if you want to test me, right? Because I'm telling you right now, there are a lot of podcast shows out there and a lot of guests that come on shows and they go, get in touch, and they don't have the time. And I promise you want to test me on my authenticity, send me an email and I will respond back to you and we will start a relationship, because I really do care to build relationships with people. I'm not interested in the bots and all this stuff. I definitely will be using and implementing bots and anything that's automated, but it has to be with my personal, I need to shine through. I need to have my personality shine through and be authentic, even though, you could use automation as well. But send me an email to daniel@getfeatured.com. It's daniel@getfeatured.com. And in the title, just put authenticity. So I know it's from this podcast show and I know I should respond to you. So again, it's daniel@getfeatured.com. And in the title, just put authenticity.
Daniel, thank you so much. Any parting words?
One other thing as well is if you want to check out my show, so it's danielgefen.com with one F, or if you have an iPhone, which I'm sure most of you probably do, just go to iTunes and just type in Can I Pick Your Brain? That's the name of my show, Can I Pick Your Brain? And I'd love to get feedback from you. Dave, it's been such an honor to really come on your show. And I think we're going to have a little conversation after the show about potentially working together, because I see a lot of synergy with ClickFunnels and Get Featured. So I'm excited for that.
Love to. Daniel, again, thank you so much. Everyone, check out getfeatured.com. And again, make sure you email Daniel at getfeatured.com. And by all means, if you haven't already subscribed to Can I Pick Your Brain podcast, go out there and check it out. Daniel, thanks again, bud. I look forward to talking to you real soon.
Thank you so much.
Thanks for listening to Funnel Hacker Radio Podcast. If you'd like to be notified anytime we release a new episode, just subscribe over at funnelhackerradio.com. In addition to that, we'd love to send you a free gift. You can find that free gift at funnelhackerradio.com/free trial. One last thing is we love giving away cars. So if you'd like access to a free dream car, all you have to do is go to funnelhackerradio.com/dream car and you'll get all the details. Thanks again for listening.